There. I call to order City Council and Planning Commission joint meeting, August 13th, 2024. I asked Ms. Beck to call roll for the group.
Demore, present. Shields.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Walker. Here. Murphy.
Present.
Buck.
Here.
Detmer. Here. McSweeney.
Here.
Brady.
Here.
Moss.
Here.
Rick.
No.
Paul.
No.
No. Ted. Robson. Present. And Wilmot.
Here. We have two quorums. Turn it over to our city manager. He'll do an introduction, I'm sure, and then bring up department heads.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for coming out on such a beautiful evening. I certainly appreciate the investment of your time. Certainly appreciate your service to the city of Petoskey over the course of many years. And obviously this evening, as we walk through this capital improvement plan, there's been a lot of effort on behalf of staff to get us to this point. So we certainly appreciate them as well. I say this quite often, but I truly am blessed to work with this team that is with the city, very high performing, very dedicated to serving the city of Petoskey, and I think we truly get along well. We like each other, and we work hard and we play hard as well. So I certainly value them and appreciate the investment of their time as they put this plan together as well. So this is a very informal evening. Feel free to get up, get beverages, get something to drink, eat, use the facilities as you need to, but hopefully it will get you out at a reasonable time so you can enjoy this wonderful evening that we have in front of us. So this is the 2025 to 2030 capital improvement plan as drafted currently. Obviously, this has been on our website for a couple of weeks now. There's a mechanism here that people can provide comments and feedback through the website that goes to me, that I will funnel forward to City Council. So that will remain active for folks to participate with their comments. Obviously, moving forward, we'll have this going forward to next week's Planning Commission meeting. So we can have further discussion with Planning Commission members individually at that meeting. And then the following week would be back to City Council for further discussion at that meeting as well. So still a lot of opportunities for back and forth discussion. So if you don't think about something tonight, think about it and come back at your respective meeting, and we'll continue to address any sort of questions or concerns. And obviously, always feel free to email me, and I'll make sure the appropriate staff member is copied in on that as well, and we'll get you a response as quickly as possible to answer your question. So just overall, just as a reminder, the capital improvement plan is a planning and fiscal management tool. We try our best effort to forecast and anticipate things over the next 6 years. As we look back, some things we are pretty well right on. Some things we miss from a budgeting standpoint. It's very difficult in this environment to forecast what a project maybe 6 years out may actually look like from a budget standpoint. We try to do our best effort to do that. And then as well, what we can anticipate is the things out of our control, whether it's COVIDs or any sort of natural disasters that we certainly hope we don't see or anticipate. But as things change around us, we need to be flexible and change with what's happening around us. If the economy kind of takes a turn, this may restrict what we are able to do within the plan. So this is a plan. Plans are subject to change based on a lot of different factors, as we all know, but this hopefully gives us some guidance as we go forward over the next 6 years. Really looking at the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, Act 33 of 2008. This is what enabling legislation that kind of dictates this process of formulating a capital improvement plan. Actually, the Planning Enabling Act is fairly specific in that this is a process that goes through Planning Commission. Planning Commission creates this plan. I've really never worked in a community that happens. We have professional staff that this is what they've trained for. This is what they're educated to do. So in my mind, it makes sense to have this kind of formulated at a staff level, produce it in the way we're doing this evening. This really, from a Planning Commission standpoint, really needs to line up pretty closely with the master plan. And one of the things I wanted to do this time, and I didn't quite get to that. If you notice the accordion that's in your booklets, I wanted to add one more column, and I'm planning to do this. I'm going to keep a note and do this next year, but I want a column that essentially says which item in the master plan does this capital item address or falls underneath. So really would be helpful, I think, for all of you to know what specific item is being addressed in the master plan by this going forward, because really as a staff, we should be formulating or putting projects forward that are in concert with the master plan. So as you go through this, you can be asking yourself that question and look through the Petoskey or the Livable Petoskey master plan and kind of formulate that in your own mind. But that's really what this document should be doing, is kind of tracing back to the master plan. So the capital improvement plan coordinates the location, the timing, the financing of capital improvements over the 6-year period. These are major projects. These are not your typical, going to Meyer Ace Hardware and picking up some nuts and bolts. These are significant, major, non-reoccurring physical expenditures, land, buildings, public infrastructure, and equipment. The CIP assists us in implementing our strategic planning efforts, which I just mentioned, and it supports the priorities within the master plan. Typically, definition, capital expenditure is has greater than 3 years of useful life, is greater than 25,000 from a project cost standpoint, or it's greater than $10,000 from an equipment, vehicle, or material cost. Some overall highlights of the capital improvement plan that's in front of you. It's almost a $75 million 6-year improvement plan from an expenditure standpoint. 10.6 million is in the 2025 capital budget. And general fund specifically, where we focus a lot of our effort on general fund because we know what our tax resources are fairly close. We know what that revenue number is. We know what that means. And so we focus a lot of attention on general fund. A lot of these projects that you're going to hear about tonight come out of our enterprise funds, water, sewer, electric. And so you're going to hear a lot of that, a lot of those projects. And I would just say, as I got to stop saying this, but I'm still somewhat of an outsider. I haven't been here as long as most of you, but really kudos to all of you. This community really does invest in infrastructure in a great way. All the undergrounding that's been going on over the past many years to get to a point where we're like 77% underground, something like that. So it's been an investment. These are not cheap projects to do. But the value afterwards is just outstanding. So again, kudos to you to support these infrastructure projects as we move forward. I would just say as a primer, we are working with Resort and Bear Creek Township, we did get grant funds to do a regional look at our infrastructure needs from a water and sewer standpoint. So that project is ongoing. We should have that wrapped up by the end of this calendar year, really to forecast out what our demands are in our utility system and the water and sewer side over the next several years, not just in the city of Petoskey, but also our surrounding service area. So we've got a list of 20 to 25 projects in the queue that either are exploratory, or a developer calls us up and say, I've got a project that I want to do. This is what I need from a water sewer standpoint. And we just keep a running spreadsheet of those interactions. Some of these projects likely will never materialize. Some of them certainly will and have already started. So that project is ongoing. We got a $50,000 grant to help us, assist us with doing this work. So that will hopefully be, again, completed by the end of the calendar year. We'll have good data to know where our demand nodes are in the system, both from us and and Bear Creek and Resort Township as well. If you look in your booklet under, I believe it's tab 3, there's a section on there on revenue. So if we're ever interested in how do we determine what our capacity is in the general fund to do capital projects. Obviously, utility funds are enterprise. Those are user fees that provide revenue for the enterprise funds. Those are self-sustaining. General fund obviously is a different story. So we know what our revenue expectations are. We have escalators that we can anticipate. For instance, in 25, we're programming a 4% property tax revenue increase, just based on how things are proceeding. Hopefully it likely will be more than that, but we want to be very conservative in our revenue estimates. So as we put our revenues and we know what our expenditures are, we can come up with kind of what is that difference? And so we have an idea of how much we have potentially to spend on capital improvement projects. We did earmark $100,000 that would be coming out of the general fund reserves to help supplement capital improvement funds out of the general fund. And that's you'll see that in tab 3, $100,000 over the next 6-year period, to help us kind of, again, reinforce the need to do these capital improvement projects. We have been in our past so reliant on grant funds, and we will still chase grants. There's no question about that. But sometimes the delays that we see in seeing a grant materialize and get all the way to a grant agreement, now we're almost 2 years later and the cost of construction has gone up exponentially. So we certainly want to make sure that we have resources in place that we're maybe not so reliant on grant funds, that we can get projects done a little bit quicker, so we can take advantage of maybe construction costs now versus in the future when we anticipate higher costs going forward. So that's obviously up for further discussion with City Council if there's a desire for that to continue, but that's how this budget has been built from a revenue standpoint to support general fund capital projects. Overall, there's about $3.3 million in grants or TIFA dollars in 2025. There's $1.2 million in the winter sports park. That's from a variety of sources: grant funds, privately raised funds through the Friends of the Winter Sports Park, and then also what I'm proposing in this budget is to really activate our ARPA dollars that at this point have not been utilized. So in this budget is the reallocation or the activation of those ARPA dollars into the Winter Sports Park Pavilion project, so we can get that project kind of over the finish line, if you will. We are up against a deadline to get those ARPA funds encumbered. We have to get that done by the end of this fiscal year or the end of this calendar year. And then we have to have the money spent by the end of 26. So that's obviously up for further discussion as well, but that's how this has been initially constructed. Mike in the Utilities Department has a $300,000 Eagle grant as part of the 25 to continue, exploration on lead and lead service line replacements. So that will continue, that exploration and that inventory will continue in 2025. So just a schedule of where we have come from and where we're at going forward. So this process started for department heads back in the end of May. So department heads were provided worksheets to start this process. I really encourage department heads to funnel this work down to their line staff to make sure that, because those folks that are boots on the ground in the field know a lot of different needs that they experience from a day in, day out basis. So really getting department heads engaged with their staff to make sure that they're a part of this process as well. So July 10th, the edited worksheets were due to my office. On August 8th, the proposed CIP was issued for review and comment on our website. Tonight, obviously, we're having our combined work session. And again, next Wednesday, Planning Commission review and recommendation. And then the 26th, City Council review and potential approval. So just overall, by capital expenditures by funds, you can see over, what is that, 52% of the expenditures are utility enterprise funds. Only 6% of our capital improvement expenditures are general fund dollars coming out. So you can kind of see how that plays out. As I mentioned before, the enterprise funds are a big user of the capital improvement plan. Their needs. If you do any sort of work in one of our, like our wastewater treatment plant, very expensive components, technology, equipment within that treatment system, and then all of our underground piping, collection system, water distribution network. While that's not maybe the most exciting project to see, those are things that allow us to continue to have economic development in our community. I've said this many times, without adequate infrastructure underground, it will certainly bring economic development to a screeching halt. And we're seeing that a little bit in some of our study that we're doing, which is why we are going through the process of really analyzing where our demand nodes are in our system. We have plenty of capacity at the treatment plant. Actually, we would like to see more flow come into the plant. The plant works better at a certain % flow. But our limiting factor is the pipes to get it to the treatment plant. So we're analyzing those bottleneck areas, those areas that are restricting flow from reaching our plant adequately. So that'll be part of the analysis that we have going forward as well. But all the utility stuff, again, while not overly exciting to necessarily see or talk about, those are very critical projects as we look at economic development in and around our community. Just another graph to show the expenditure breakdown a slightly different way. As you can see, parking fund at $445,000. Amy will talk about a few projects on the horizon as we reinvest in our flat parking lots at this point, and have further discussion on what other priorities there might be for other type of structures. The general fund we mentioned, we do a great job of reinvesting in our vehicles and equipment as well. So there's an internal service fund that is there for when we need to recycle out a vehicle. We have funds in place that allow us to do that in an efficient way. And Mike does a good job of managing that budget. Again, you can see electric, water, and sewer and street departments. Our big, and Mike will talk about it in depth. We do a rotating street project where we'll have a big year. And then we'll transition into surface streets and mill and resurface projects, which is what we did this year. So next year in 25 will be a heavy year, and Howard Street will be our big project in the city next year. So one more thing I'm going to hit on, and then I'll turn it over to Director Carr. One other thing I'm asking City Council for is to apply for additional county ARPA funds. There's a second allocation of county ARPA funds. This would be another $50,000 allocation. And I would ask to match that 50,000 with 50,000 of our ARPA dollars. So that's $600,000 ARPA budget that we currently have would go down to 550. But engage that 50,000 of our ARPA with county for $100,000 project to do some upgrades here at City Hall, access control, having key swabs or fobs at our doors, so we know who's coming and going. We have a pretty antiquated, each of us have a physical key. There's punch button lock mechanisms that are very antiquated in and around the building. So I think it's time that we reinvest in some newer technology. Also looking at some updates here, some audio visual updates, especially as we are more and more doing the Zoom functions and keeping that viable for our folks to engage with us. The quality is not high level. I think we can do better from a audio visual standpoint. So looking at doing some security updates in the building, as well as some updates to this building or this room, as well as the community room, with some technology as we have bigger gatherings there to be able to support the new technology that's available to have a conference with technology that people can zoom in and have remote meetings that way. So that's what I would be asking City Council for, is to, again, apply to the county for another opportunity to engage with ARPA funds, and then use our match out of our ARPA funds for those improvements. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Director Carr?
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm not good at math, but I'm trying to understand. Back in June, the city council already allocated $50,000 to the Winter Sports Park.
Yep.
And that was submitted to Emmett County for a $50,000 match.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean that we're working with $550,000 total, correct? So if you're proposing another 50,000 for those upgrades, we'd then be at 500,000.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes. So to give you an update on that, the first project was to use those funds to provide snowmaking equipment for Winter Sports Park. What we've since learned is this is not a plug and play type system. So our infrastructure at the Winter Sports Park is in need of upgrades to be able to do this, to add a snowmaker or two, and to support that. We need to upgrade our water lines through there. We need to upgrade our electrical. So I've talked to the county about transitioning that opportunity more into allowing us to put a utility plan together, to really know what our needs are fully before we make that investment into that technology at a greater level. So they had no issues with us transitioning into a planning document, so we can get our infrastructure in a place that can support that technology.
Is this for downhill skiing?
No, this will be for sledding, the sled hill, yeah. And helping us to formulate the ice skating area on a regular basis. So I'm gonna have Director Carr come up and talk about a few public safety improvements out of buildings and grounds.
Probably not. I'll probably mess this up as soon as I get here, but
Yeah, just use the arrows.
That work?
Back and forth.
okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I think Shane would probably have us here every single night of the week if he could and on weekends, but thank you for all being here. As you can see in the slide here, we're looking for upgrades. I'm just going to touch on the gun range specifically. We have a 2-station gun range. It needs upgrades. The photo on the right, you can see how we have over the years patched rubber to try and hold in the filling that stops the rounds from penetrating into the wall, which is filled with several feet of ripped up tire, basically rubber. Well, now, over the years of use, there's a large hole and all of that material is starting to spill out. So now we have several bags of filled material alongside the wall, which are no longer in that wall, stopping the rounds from penetration. So we're in desperate need of upgrades there. There is some silver lining that we'll see if it comes through, but there's an NRA grant for they'll match up to $25,000, but it's year specific. And I have a notification on my phone, a reminder on January 2nd to try and apply for that to see if we qualify. But that would definitely help out our situation there in order to have that. We have to have a company come in, and there aren't any in the state of Michigan that do it. They come in and have to take all the material out, separate all of the lead and things that are inside that area, clean it, and then re-rubberize it. So
I presume the large hole is directly behind the bullseye.
absolutely. You can assume that. Touch on that.
Sure.
Firing range is also right underneath my office, so. So I'm Kendall Klingel-Smith, Parks and Recreation Director. Part of my duties include the city buildings minus the DPW. So there are some areas here that I will touch on. And so the tube heaters, you'll see the picture on the left-hand side. Those are, I believe, the original tube heaters for when the Lake Street Fire Station was put into service. Those are now obsolete. We cannot even get any parts for those anymore. Those are what keep the bays warm in the wintertime. Same with the HVAC unit that currently rests up on top of, it's one of a few on top of that building. That's the original 1989 HVAC unit. We have been told by Ballards if it breaks down, there's probably no life saving to it. So we which we have done in the past is we've gone through a process to replace a lot of the original old HVAC units. The firing range, Chief Carr talked about, and I also think that there's something that he has a hard enough time recruiting new staff. So part of the presentation when you hire new staff is to be able to provide them good training facilities. And the firing range currently as it stands is not something that we're going to want to show potential employees, but the historical, another part of my duties is the historical museum. Our arrangement with the Historical Society is they take care and manage the inside and we take care and manage the outside, we being the city. There are some significant issues with the pillars that surround the outside of the museum. They're 6x6 posts, and many of them are rotten on the bottom. You can see those are a couple of examples in the middle of those bottom two pictures. So the plan is to peel off the cedar boards that encase the 6x6 and address any structural issues with all of those. This was a quote that I did receive last year for that particular project. So 2026, in the budget. A couple of things, if you recall, in 2021, we hired a firm to come in and do a capital needs assessment for us. And there were some more pressing projects that were categorized into immediate need of 5 to 10 and a 11 to 15 year checklist to try to get those done within those periods of time. So a lot of the things that you see, the routine maintenance on here, come from the capital needs assessment. I think the last few years, we've done a pretty good job of trying to check a lot of the priority issues off. I think we're doing a good job as best we can. But the window replacement right on the fire station next door, there are currently 3 right now that I am going to have to get the concrete below the encasement of the window has deteriorated. So I'm hiring somebody to come in and just patch that for now to mitigate any further water damage. And so the best way to fix that is to get those windows out. This is, you know, it could be a project that could be phased, but right now that's what we put in for the window replacement in East Lake Street. Kitchen renovations, you want to talk about those, Chief? And the floor?
Yeah.
Those three.
Go ahead.
Yeah, advance on the laptop. There you go.
There we go. You can see in the center and to your right, those are a couple of photographs of our kitchen at Station 4-5. I've been here 20 years and we haven't had any upgrades then. Since then, there's a dishwasher that's never worked since I've been here. The cupboards are outdated. A lot of the hardware is separated from particle boards and they don't close correctly. The countertops are discolored and missing some of the trim pieces and such. And we spend a lot of time over there when you're on 12-hour shifts for having meals. People have their lunch there on the day shift, and in the night shift, they're preparing their meals and cleanup and whatnot for their dinner there as well. So once again, if you're talking recruiting, that's another big area of, you know, this is where you have your meals. It's a benefit for us to have something presentable. And the photo to the left is the flooring. We've done a pretty good job over the years, truthfully, even though it looks somewhat dingy, of keeping that in good repair. When they did our estimate last year for the epoxy of that, they said there would be minimal patching. And the longer we wait, we run the risk of them having to do more repair for it to hold the epoxy. And what we'd like to do is have them line the floors. So when we're backing in and things, we line the trucks up, which is safer, and then have epoxy in order for it to continue on for years to come. So. Oh, yes. I'm not even sure where that is on here. Maybe the next slide.
Go back.
I think it just says furniture.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, there's our report writing for the officers is in need of a spritzing, I guess. I would like to see, right now we just have 3 computers in there and they're in the open. When we have other officers that are in there trying to do reports or return phone calls and do follow-up, it's noisy. There is no specific workspaces. I would like to see somewhat cubicles with their own workspace, with their own computers, with storage. We have shelving from the probably early 70s in there and file cabinets that probably could be repurposed somewhere else that we're not utilizing, and space that we could reimagine in there. So I would, once again, recruiting as well as just user-friendly for officers to be able to function at a high level and have quick turnover to be able to get back on the road. They're finding themselves having to wait for other people to do their follow-up before they can get into those areas and finish theirs without distraction. So we haven't, that's kind of a rough number that we threw out there, that could be adjusted because we aren't exactly sure the configuration that we're looking for, but we just would like to get that had considered for 2026. The other project. Hang on. Too many buttons. All right,
What do you?
I'm trying to go back here.
Starting over.
We're starting over.
Is that what you're looking?
Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. So the US tunnel, the concrete repair, that's the pedestrian tunnel down here that has had some fairly significant pieces of concrete. So there's some structural, it's not any structural. We don't have to worry about it being safe, but we certainly want to repair the damage that's been done with those pieces of concrete that have fallen off. And it is a skilled job. It's going to require someone with that type of unique experience to come in and really get the concrete structurally to fit into the tunnel. So that is also in 2026.
And no,
Yes, sir.
because the road work above, the new road work above kind of addresses the fact that water has gotten down there over the years. But, you know, the fact that the road was replaced here just recently.
Hard to tell.
Okay.
I mean, it's been there for a long time. It's a pretty exposed tunnel. You know, there's a lot of humidity in it. It certainly gets a lot of vibrations when trucks go over the top. I'm sure that has something to do, you know, with the deterioration. I don't know. I don't remember its condition prior to the 31 project being done. You know, if there was a correlation there between that, then
Well, no, I think it had been deteriorating for some time.
it appears that if you look at it, there was some patchwork that has been done in the past. But I think we're beyond patchwork. I think we have some rather large areas that need to be, you know, tied into the structure itself.
That's what I was trying to say, that
Yeah.
the working tunnel is independent of the road work on top of it, so.
Correct. Yeah,
There's nothing that MDOT would do with it.
that question has been asked.
I have a question.
The answer is no.
The answer is no.
Would you, or would the city possibly consider moving that up if you're gonna be painting a mural in that space?
So currently, we are looking at, we have a structural engineer putting together some specifications for us. The reason that I put it in 2025 is that's also when the Mitchell Street Bridge is getting their concrete work done. So I thought this might be an efficient way where we could perhaps work with the state and get some of their people, some of their contractors to do that same work. So that's the reason why I put it in 2026.
It's possible the mural can be completed prior to the vote, is that correct?
That is correct. Okay.
Where did it go?
Hang on, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. We wouldn't take a break, get a drink. This one moves and this one doesn't.
There's nobody outside.
Oh,
So when you get to.
Oh,
in this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
look at your laptop and I got the.
I get it. I missed the tutorial before you all got here. All right. Okay, all right, now we're good. So forward. There you go. So these next two projects are projects that have some history, meaning that decisions were made to
to get these projects done in 2020, grants written in 2021. An unprecedented time of supply and demand of labor costs, material. And both of these projects, the Park Avenue and the Winter Sports Park, are tied with some significant fundraising dollars. So we did bid out the Park Avenue project this spring. It came in high. We are value engineering this project with plans to bid it out next fall. We typically have historically better luck in bidding these projects out in the fall, so contractors can get them in the spring. And this is a project that we would prefer to do in the spring. So that's the Park Avenue project. Winter Sports Park pavilion project is is a conversion of the hockey rink into a more year-round amenity there with a covered open space. There is currently about $1.2 million privately raised through fundraising efforts, through grants. And again, this was a project that in 2021 had a $600,000 cost on it. So that gives you a little bit of perspective about the increase in what we've been dealing with when we try to do these projects. It's very difficult to, I don't think anyone knew what the costs of everything was going to be in 2021 to now. It's just there's been Build Back Better funds, billions of dollars of infrastructure, which have put material in a shortage, labor costs, contractors, architects. Everybody's time is at a premium now because of the amount of money that has gone out. Even the state it took almost 2 years to get this project approved by the state because the state had an influx in a lot of their grant applications, and a lot of them were still working from home. So it's been a process. But anyway, next year that is a project that it certainly would appreciate being done. There are, like I said, grant dollars that are attached to it, and certainly we want to take advantage of those funds. The Curtis, a few years ago, we did our master plan, and part of the second phase of the master plan, I wanted to get a individual master plan for each park. So this year we did Penn, Arlington, and Washington. Next year, Curtis, Lockwood, and River Road are on the docket. Bates sewer grinder pumps. These are either the waste pumps. We have a question?
Yeah, so the master plans for Curtis Park. And that looks like 10,000 for each park. And I know it's way ahead, maybe I moved way too far ahead, but in 2030, looks like they've allocated almost $1 million to do something to Curtis Park. Or not allocated, but you plan, and I know that's 5 years ahead, but that really will be based more on what happens with these master plans. I mean, is it just kind of a placeholder?
Right.
Or do you really think there's going to be $1 million?
Yeah,
it's not. I think put $1 million into, I guess.
Well, unless we hit a recession in 2030, I mean, it's very possible. But so many of these master plans just depend on the public input and just the cost of doing these. But I think it's a good idea to get these somewhere in the plan, because it does help if you apply for a grant to have a project like that referenced in the master plan.
I have another question, Kendall, about that too. So the master plan's allocation for 2025 would be $30,000, and that's for professional services. So that would be like for Beckett and Rader to come up with the master plans.
Correct.
Backing off just a little bit, I was a little bit confused. Earlier, like.
Thank you. On Pennsylvania Park, what's the total cost? This says 350,000 from the general fund. Is that the total cost of the project or is that just the portion from the general fund?
That's just the portion from the general fund.
So could you elaborate a little bit more about what the total cost is and where the other funds are coming from?
I believe it is 749,000, I believe, is what we put in the budget for that. The other funds that will support that project will come from the parking, the streets, and the electric.
And is in terms of the winter sports park, you mentioned the number 1.2 million, but you said that was raised privately. 1.2 million is the total cost of the project, is it not?
Of the shelter,
Of the shelter?
correct. To replace the existing hockey rink, to replace the boards, to replace the concrete, those are the additional costs.
So the 550, is that are you figuring that into the 1.2 million or is that over and above the one?
That's over and above.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Do you know if I should wait till the end or interrupt you? But maybe back.
Piggybacking off of the winter sports park question, so does this 550, does this, I know it's, you're gonna probably send it out for rebudget and get additional quote, but do you believe this gets you across the finish line with this 550,000?
I don't know. The plan would be to bid this out, see what the costs come back in at. If it is over and above what we have budgeted, then we value engineer. Or we ask for to go into fund balance.
Okay. But without getting a requote, we just don't know.
We've stopped and we've never stopped, but the project itself has been redesigned 3 different times because of the cost of the materials. So we don't have an absolute cost yet for this final version. We're getting closer, but we hope that what we have budgeted will get what we want. But I don't know.
If I can understand the thought process here, the ARPA funds are more or less a once in a lifetime opportunity to get this grant funding. You have a project that's already gone through the approval process. And so you're not entirely sure where you're gonna end up, but you have to get those funds allocated to even be close to the finish line. Is that kind of the thought
Yeah, I think that's fair.
process?
Yeah, and it's up to the council how to allocate the funds. But regardless, I think the project needs to be a priority to get completed.
Yeah, I certainly think it has a lot of support in the community, and I know just firsthand with Rotary, we've done some efforts to try to help get this project completed, but it's a big lift. So
It is.
I appreciate the effort that you've done.
No, we're going to keep chugging away at it.
Just one point of correction, the actual amount of money would be 500,000 if 50,000 is allocated as Shane requested toward this building.
That's correct.
Right.
But the ARPA account balance is earning money each month, and so like by 3 quarters through 2025, it would be this would be correct, that 550 could be allocated to the winter sports park and 50,000 to match the county grant.
Okay. Thank you, Audrey. And do you want discussion now or just questions? We save in discussion till later.
Well, this is your meeting.
It's up to you. I mean, from my perspective, thus far on city council, all our discussions around the ARPA funds have focused on their use for aspects of the winter sports park that more broadly benefit the community. And that's the input that I have received from the community. Now, I'm only speaking for myself right now. I oppose the use of this money for this project. We've got $100,000, as Shane explained, city manager, to transition to utility planning for sledding and the ice rink. And from my perspective, the community is best benefited. Not that this isn't a benefit, and I respect all that Kendall and everyone is doing. I think it has a broader reach to try to improve those assets for the community. Again, only speaking for myself. I don't know about other council members. And again, I say that respectfully in appreciation for your efforts. But it's a one-time opportunity to have a significant impact on aspects of the park that everybody uses regardless of your economic status. And so that would be my perspective on it. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your feedback, everybody. So the grinder pumps at Bates, that's what helps pass the sewage, if you will. Those pumps are need to be replaced. The upper tennis courts at the high school, as part of preventative maintenance, those are relatively new courts. I think they went in 2017, shortly after I started. It's best practice every 7-8 years to go in there and repaint. And there are some Sarah, if you can go to the tennis court picture. Next one. So there are, no, go back.
I did hit it.
Okay. So the far, it would be the far east court is showing likely more wear than it should, for being this old. There are some pretty significant cracks there. It was very difficult for tennis. Tennis wouldn't even play a match on that court. The lower courts are in you know, they need a complete overhaul too. So part of the fix that we can do by doing some preventative maintenance on this is fix some of these drainage issues. So they don't get any worse. The downtown greenway corridor engineering, that is to complement the lofts of Lumber Square. So hopefully when they get done, we can move on with that project. And every year we're putting in money for Little Traverse Wheelway resurfacing, which is much like painting a bridge. There could be some grant to the Wheelway picture. There we go. This is just you know, it's an aged infrastructure. So there could be some potential grant money out there to resurface more than what we can, but we're looking at about anywhere between 2,500 and 2,800 feet a year to get those resurfaced.
Kendall, a question from a community member about this. Is there any thoughts about stockpiling some of this money and doing it in a 5-year increment and using some of that money as a better match for a grant versus piecemealing, as this resident said, you know, then you have it, you always have bad stretches out there versus if you wait to do a larger stretch to the top through the city, our jurisdiction at one time, then you have a long, nice stretch versus, you know, lots of bad sections among a little bit of better.
I think that's an appropriate thought too. If there are funds out there to match, that would be the way. I mean, certainly we should get a cheaper linear foot rate if we do more of it.
Okay.
So 150, 200,000 was a number that we've just been going with, but if there are opportunities out there to
pool that money for matching grants, I think that would be a wise way to go about it as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks for being open to that.
Okay. So the Bayfront East, we'll call it the Arboretum. It's the area past the lime kiln pond to the restrooms. This is a need. I mean, they're all needs, but this is a section of trail that had this is a whole section of that park was compromised heavily during the high water era. We lost a significant amount of shoreline. We had to redirect some sanitary sewer through the middle of the park. The trail is not in good condition. And so what we're proposing to do is to put that trail more inland. So it's protected from the bluff, from the shoreline. When we have high water, we will have high water issues again. And then to use this as the field as a conversion into more of a pollinator interpretive area, which would benefit butterflies and birds and just make it more to a natural setting with some perhaps stone pathways. And this would be a 10-foot wide. What we're proposing is a 10-foot wide concrete path that is bookended on either end by Boyne Country Sports. It's a 10-foot concrete path, and behind the bathrooms, it's a 10-foot wide concrete path. So this would complete that section. Concrete is certainly it's more expensive, but it's more durable, and it would likely be a lot less maintenance for the future. And I think that's an area, I know that's an area that we really need to try to get fixed. There is a $250,000 ask that I have out through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. This total project cost is $900,000. So again, I think there are some opportunities here when we get the bids back to value engineer this project as well. But it certainly is a priority to get that path and that field converted. The pedestrian bridge down here, we have some issues with the pedestrian bridge. We were going to redeck it last year, and we took off the first 3 sets of boards on this side, and there was some significant rust on the stringers. And so we've had a structural engineer look at it. He's given us back a proposal. So what we are hoping that we can end up doing is taking off all of that wood and coming back with some additional bracing underneath the wood that will satisfy the integrity for the next 20 to 30 years. We don't know that until we get the boards off. Minimally, what we want to do is get a multi-year fix on it. So if we do have to replace this bridge, it's going to be in working condition. Magnus Park plan and pro forma. Magnus Park is an opportunity for us to really invest in. It's the secret's out. I mean, we're almost 100% full all summer long. It's a great campground. It does generate quite a bit of revenue. I think last year was over $200,000 that it contributed back into the general fund. The utilities are we're made for 50 amp campers to come in anymore. It is all of the power in that 68 campground site comes off of one transformer. We cannot upgrade any pedestals anymore. All but 2 pedestals are 30 amp pedestals. And it's an opportunity down there, and even perhaps up by that property up by Wendy's is actually considered part of Magnus Park. So there's a if you dream a little bit, that can all work together to really, to enhance that area. So what I'm proposing is we develop a master plan plus a business pro forma that can provide some revenue, some revenue generation ideas.
Can you describe the seasonal housing? It would be up on the bluff? And who would it be for?
Well, I mean, what we had talked about as part of Magnus Park could be to have some more year-round housing opportunities. If it's still going to be part of a campground, but right now we don't have any year-round. We're not equipped for year-round camping at Magnus. So one of the discussions that we've had would be to potentially take an area, and let's say it could be on that Wendy's lot up there, and put some little cabins, perhaps park models that could potentially house people year round. If it's, I mean, it could be campers, it could be traveling nurses, it could be, a variety of perhaps some seasonal, employees. So those have been, kind of spitball ideas that we think about on how maybe we can not only enhance the campground, but help contribute to some of the issues that we have in this town for some seasonal housing. I know that there's a kind of a line of delineation between what's a campground and what's a subdivision. And, those are just details that we would have to work through before we commit to anything. But I think there would be, I know there would be opportunities. There are state parks that have year-round cabins, some private campgrounds that have year-round cabins. So I think that would be something we want to capture when we go through a master plan and pro forma.
Well, I think that because that piece of property is like up above the waterfront, would that still qualify for TIFA funds? Or, I mean, because you're using the TIFA funds for the Magnus Park master plan, and that's on the water, would that piece of property also qualify for other TIFA dollars?
I believe that is all part of TIFA, but
Okay.
I'd have to look at the map to confirm that. I know that is.
Wendy's,
Okay.
that, I'm pretty sure it is within the TIFA district.
Okay, we'll go to wrapping it up here, thankfully. 2026. So 2026, we have Riverbend Park skateboard equipment. If you've taken a good look at that skateboard equipment, it is not in good shape. The company who supplied the equipment for us is out of business. We cannot get parts for it. There are some heavings to some of the ramps. Some of the approaches are worn out and bent. And while it does get used quite a bit, I think it's certainly worth an investment to rethink about that, to replace what's there with some new, more modern pieces of equipment, because it really is, I mean, a lot of kids really like that. I mean, that's kind of the only place for them here locally to go. And we've really tried to fix and to mitigate some of the issues, and we've exhausted our options. So Winter Sports Park parking lot resurfacing, parking lot aren't something that we've paid a lot of attention to in the last several years, but it's certainly part of our infrastructure, things we need to pay attention to. And my thought is, once the Winter Sports Park project gets improved, that'd be a great time to redo the parking lot. There are no lines there. There are no handicap lines there. And that would be the time to do that project. Bayfront Park Resource Center. This was a one that came out of our capital needs assessment.
It's a building with a lot of opportunity. Right now, we run the concession stand out of it, and I don't want to ignore it just because it may not be getting used to the degree that I'd like to have it used. But I think there's some opportunity, and I think that's a building that we should look at, just to make sure that it's in good working order. Marina B pier upgrades. The B pier is an interesting, it's an interesting dock. Before I started, they did some redecking on it, and we were told by the county that we had to get the electric up to the 2017 code. So what they did was they put 17 pedestals per breaker. And it only takes 100 milliamps to trip a breaker. Okay, and the average boat can leak 10 at any given time. So you've got 17 boats hooked on one breaker. Our staff constantly is running back and forth, fixing power issues on B pier. When we did A, C, and D in 2019, we put 4 slips per breaker. So this is something. Our marina is a great facility. People love it. We love it. Provides a great service to this town, and it's one of those things that we just need to do it the right way. And while we're going to do it, we may as well try to put some new deck boards on it, because those deck boards are also in pretty rough shape. And lastly, the Little Traverse Wheelway resurfacing.
Does the state participate in the marina project?
They do. Yep.
2 quick questions. You mentioned $200,000 revenue approximately for Magnus Park. What about all of the other user fees combined, the marina and any other user fees that we may have for the fields when they're used and so forth? What's the total revenue for Parks and Rec facilities?
The marina is an enterprise fund, so that doesn't support the general fund operations. The marina is only, and
what's its revenue?
Revenue, we're well over $1 million. Maybe not net. Yeah. Those are quite.
I was just curious. I mean, the parks are the jewel in our crown. I understand that. It's not about money, but I was curious to know what the numbers were to roughly estimate a return on investment.
Yeah, I don't have that answer for you, but I do know that when we have a tournament, when teams come in from out of town to rent our field, we charge them a private rate. So we really do the best we can to squeeze as much revenue as we can without affecting the ability for people to participate.
My second question, thank you. My second question was for 2025, probably every year. It seems like a lot of these projects really are targeted for the spring to get ready for our summer seasonal residents. And it looks like a pretty ambitious list for 2025. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Amy Twoopen.
Hello, everyone. Amy Twoopen, Downtown Manager. It's great to see all of you again. So for the CIP, I'm here to talk about the parking fund. Let's see here. The 2025, to Kendall's point about costs going up, the Seville lot was programmed for 2024, and it got pushed to 2025 because the engineer's estimate is actually almost 100,000 more than it was 2024. So this is a rebuilding of the parking lot that will include pay stations stormwater infrastructure and landscaping. And the reason you'll see in this, in 2025, other pay station installation, the reason we go to pay stations is they are less maintenance. The meters actually are a lot of maintenance. We spend a lot of time replacing batteries, replacing jams. So there's the maintenance issue. And then there's also, from a financial standpoint, not handling its coins and cash. From a financial security standpoint, is why we go to the pay stations. So 2025, again, is the Seville lot improvements. The contribution to the Park Avenue, the widening of that sidewalk. And then pay stations for the Petrie lot, which is by Grain Train. So that would be removing the meters and putting in pay stations. And then also the Darling lot. So that would take 2 pay stations. And then in 2025, we also have maintenance of the trolley. In motor pool, you don't see vehicle maintenance, but the trolley is not part of the motor pool. So that is all funded through the parking fund. So that's why we put it in the capital plan, because we do need exterior improvements both to the painting and the roof. Has started to have some leaks, and the wood veneer inside has water damage. So that is another project for that. Again, just back to the Seville lot, these are the pictures of the current lot. A lot of these spaces are substandard to the zoning code. They're shorter. This is a very tight lot. So the plan would be to take out all of those medians or the bumpers, so that people could pull straight through, and the spaces will be more standard to the current code.
Does that mean a reduction in the number of spaces?
Sorry?
Will that be a reduction in the number of spaces?
Reduction. There are 51 spaces now, and once rebuilt, it'll be 46 spaces. And then in 2026, we are looking at improvements to the Park Garden lot. That is not an engineered estimate, but it is about the same size as the Seville lot. And this again would be resurfacing, stormwater improvements, and changing to pay stations. We also, this parking lot has no accessible parking spaces currently, so we need to make sure we are compliant with ADA and federal law. So that is the 2026 project. Now, in the CIP previously, we've had renovation of parking lots. There's been a lot of talk about renovation of parking lots. And then there's discussion of whether do we want to do this parking lot? Do we want to do a parking structure? But these 2 lots, this is the lot which we had hoped we could do a joint project with the county. However, the county has informed us they are moving forward on resurfacing their lot in 2025 and 2026, and they're not interested in moving forward with a structure. So because we have postponed maintenance on these lots for so many years, it's time to get going. And if we aren't going to be putting a structure on them, get them up to code. So.
One more question. The pay stations, I totally understand the efficiency of the pay stations versus the parking meters. Totally get that. Have we complemented that with any customer or user friendly data collection? Are people having problems with the pay stations, and are they happy with the pay stations?
I don't think people are having problems with them. I know there are people that don't like them, and it is a learning curve. But I think the advantages of moving to that technology far outweigh the perception that they're not as friendly as meters.
Or you just avoid parking in those lots because the technology is not as true, especially for older people.
Right, though there's still meters on the streets.
So I don't know if this question might be beyond the scope of what we're discussing this evening. But I'm curious if you have any sense at this point, if you'll be proposing any more shifting of parking funds out of the account into the DMB, as was done this past year.
For the 2025 budget, we do not plan on moving parking funds to programs and services.
Thank you.
Yeah, you said that the lot where the green thing is that the Petrie lot?
Petrie, correct.
Okay, are they on board with that? I mean, the grain train, I mean, people come in and out quickly to, get some.
That actually, the Petrie lot is one of our most underutilized lots. So we are, in addition to putting in the pay station, we're going to create a permit for that lot at a reduced fee for employees and residents. But again, it is a pay for use lot. So whether people use pay station or pay meters, that will continue.
Good. Thank you.
And Amy, with the pay stations, just like the existing one, people will still be able to use like Park Mobile for the app on the.
I think you can use Park Mobile with the pay stations, but I'm not 100% sure.
So I know now on the existing pay station that we have, you can use.
Right.
You can use it. It would be nice to be able to use it on these other lots too.
Yeah.
I have found that it's actually quite. It's easier than a meter park to.
Yes.
Park in there.
Amy, I have one more. I'm looking at the capital improvement plan form under section 2 of our packet. And at the bottom under revenue assumptions, the second line says parking fund based on assumption of $100,000 in net income annually after meter rate increase. Is that the meter rate increase that already occurred, or is that?
That was based on the 2018 increase.
Okay, so the past one.
Correct.
Not a proposed one.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you, Amy. Is there any other opportunities for best management practices in terms of permeable and non-permeable surfaces? And like, how does the stormwater impact on these non-permeable surfaces and shed and all that? I just wondered if there was options for more permeable surfaces if we're gonna pave more parking lots.
It's certainly something we can look into. I know the cost is much higher and there is a very specific maintenance that you have to do. So you generally have to have a vacuum to clean. So if it's permeable and there's a lot of salt or sand that goes into it, that has to be vacuumed up. But I know and Mike can maybe touch on it as well. We've looked at permeable pavement or permeable concrete, and the cost to put it in and to maintain it isn't to the point where in our climate it has shown great promise. But I think there are things we could do, like near manhole, like where the storm drain inlet is, do some pavers so that with sand, so that some of the sediment can settle in that. But the city does do a good job of going and vacuuming out all the manhole covers as well. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, we're gonna move to streets and drainage, the fun stuff. I'm Mike Robbins, the Director of Public Works for the city, and I will start off with talking about 2025. We're gonna be doing Howard Street, beginning at Sheridan, by the school admin building and going to State Street down by the post office. There is a note that says a portion of Washington. Several years ago, we did Emmett Street in Washington. We came about halfway up the hill on Washington with new infrastructure. So we're gonna be, as we're going by Washington, we're gonna do that segment just to the west to tie into the new water main and sanitary that was placed. Howard Street, East Mitchell to Michigan Street. This you saw last year. This is tied to the Penny's Corner. We talked about removing the rail, and I have some photos that I'll show here in a minute. And we have some sidewalk fixes. Because the J.C. Penney project is ongoing, we have delayed that for this year, and hoping in the spring. They still have a lot of work to do on the Penny's building. They're going to be setting steel and raising the building. And the last thing we want is new concrete sidewalk with a crane sitting on it. So we're going to postpone that. So it's been shifted from 24 to 25. Sidewalk replacement, that's this right near the Pennies. And I'll show you a photograph of that where the rails are placed. And then miscellaneous sidewalk construction and replacement. It's a large number, but majority of that is for the Howard Street project. It'll be new sidewalks, both sides, Sheridan to State. Pennsylvania Park Avenue, there was a question about additional funds. 120,000 will be supplementing that Parks project for storm sewer. We're going to place a storm sewer underneath that widened sidewalk, and we're going to make provisions to pick up roof drains that are tied to sanitary. Those upgrades will occur when renovations are done inside the buildings. And we'll do an investigation to see if we can pick up some low-hanging fruit or easy ones. But that is all for the future. As time progresses, we hope to get all those roof drains out of the sanitary. Couple of photos, just kind of a red line showing the Howard Street project as a whole. Took a photo by the admin building at the start of the project and just some of the deteriorated curb lines. As you notice on this photograph that there is no pan to the curb because it's been overlaid. So a lot of times you'll hear on our off years, smaller years from funding, we do street mill and fills and sometimes an overlay. And this is one that has been overlaid over the years. So we will eliminate all of that and put new curb, gutter, new water main, sanitary and storm. This is the streets and drainage area at Howard and East Mitchell. You can see the rail. We're going to remove the rail on Howard Street through the concrete planter area to Mitchell. And just to throw it out there, we're looking at potentially, because this has been shifted to next year, to remove the rail on Mitchell Street as well. We wouldn't remove anything in the park, but we would potentially, if we can get decent pricing, remove it across Mitchell Street as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the planter box going to be touched at all?
Not with this project, but it is being looked at. Long term, maybe a few years out, but we've asked Beckett Rader to look at that space to see if there's anything that we can enhance that space with other than the planter, or maybe incorporate some other element in adjacent to the planter, or some new type of element where that planter is placed. But not with this funding. It's strictly going to be allocated next year for the rail removal and that sidewalk repair.
I want to ask you two Pacer ratings is what I want to ask about Howard Street. Do you know what the rating of Howard Street is?
It was fair to poor. Yeah.
Mike? One other question, since we're still talking about Howard. Is there any way that there could be bike lanes on Howard?
No, there's not. We don't have the width for the when you do a bike lane, typically it's a 2 bike lane system. So you supply it for both sides and we just don't have the width. So we've looked at that in the past on other streets. Jennings is an example where it's very wide. We did a mill and fill on that street and we striped it to try to create, but we don't call them bike lanes because it's technically not, but it is a safe zone for bikers, if you will. Slows traffic down as well with the white lines. But yeah, we're not planning on bike lanes on Howard Street.
Mike, let's make a comment. I hope this community at some point decides to take on a thorough analysis of where dual bikes go in our community. I think, hearing that the width isn't there, well, what our options are there to get dedicated bike lanes in this community and routes for someone in end of Ward 2 to get down into downtown. I think there could be a safe bike route plan process in the future to look at. Just want to make that comment.
Okay, fair. So, 2026 streets and drainage. So this is going to be a year that we kind of mix things up a little bit with even years. We have potential for MDOT PACER or MDOT small urban money in even years. So if the state came out and told us and other communities they gave you a year, assigned a year, and they're all even years for us. So we work with the county and the tribe on placement of those funds. So we did our mill and fills with the even years. And so we're hoping we aren't going to get any MDOT money in 26, but we're hoping potentially 28 or 30. But if you recall, we did Lake Street and we also resurfaced State Street during the same year. And it was quite challenging when we were running detours. And so we've kind of mixed it up where we did Mitchell Street this year, but we didn't have any large projects going on in the area because we detoured Mitchell. So this works very well. But some of the streets, College View Drive, Tall Pines Court, Buckley was looked at, Ann Street and Wesley, which are more affiliated with water main loop systems that I'll get into in just a little bit. And then we have miscellaneous sidewalk construction and replacement that we do with the mill and fills. So some photographs here. This is College View, Waukezu. It's just off of Waukezu, obviously, with a photo, but you can see the condition of the street. Curb, not the best, but it's a candidate for a mill and fill. Tall Pines Court, small segment, another dead end or cul-de-sac. Rough shape. You can see the alligatoring that's occurred there. Curbs don't look too bad, so it's a good candidate for removing the top and resurfacing. Ann Street. I'm going to talk about this a little bit because you'll hear Ann Street come up again in the water discussion. But Ann Street, Wesley Street are streets that have dead end water mains. And we have not a lot of complaints, but we have some complaints from water quality. So we did acquire an easement a few years ago from Petoskey Street dead end over to Wesley, and we're working on getting one over to Ann. But you can see Ann Street and the condition of the street. Some curb there. We'll take a look at that, but the surface is really bad. This is Wesley, and I took a photo of the hydrant. You can see it's an old style hydrant that's off the corner. 2025 electric.
I have some questions about roads.
Yeah.
I may. Sorry. So we had talked or had been mentioned that with the loss at Lumber Square and the infrastructure that's going on in Fulton, and the PACER rating of Fulton Street is like 4. It was like in the red, I think. Would that be a projected possible project for a mill and fill maybe, or repaving after the loss at Lumber Square project finishes, which I would assume would be probably 2026, as opposed to doing cul-de-sacs where like 3 people live?
Yeah.
I would wonder if like maybe Fulton would be a better investment post loss at Lumber Square and post all that disruption to the road itself and the creation of new underground infrastructure?
We'll be looking at that.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we have removed the rail on Fulton Street recently,
Yep.
last week, and today we removed the rail on Washington. We're just patching it back. Hopefully to get a sidewalk, once the lofts comes out of the ground and they establish the new drive entrances, we'll be tying a sidewalk into the Elder Piper corner, if you will. And then we're also looking at sidewalk improvements around the loft. They have to put a sidewalk in on their side. And we have some work. We just added a little segment yesterday to that area to try to tie those in. But yes, we are looking at Fulton. It is a major street. It is ranked as a major street, has been for years. So it may be eligible for some funding as well.
Okay, thank you.
2025 electric. Undergrounding is the main focus of our electric. We try to keep up with the street projects, or we're slightly ahead of the street projects. Just depends on the type of work that's required. But we're doing portions of Howard Street. Some portions of Howard Street are already done. When we do other projects, there's just not good start-stop points without going an extra block or two. So you can see there's 150,000. It's not full length. The main line of Howard Street is already placed underground. We're doing portions of Fulton, Petoskey, and Grove, which are adjacent to Howard. So we'll be picking up undergrounding there. West Sheridan underground update. That is Sheridan Street that is currently underground, that was placed underground years ago, and it's due to be upgraded. The cable is old. There is conduit in the ground for the majority of the route, so it's a matter of pulling out wire and pulling in, but we're still working through if it's going to be adequately sized, but that is on the radar screen for next year.
I'm just kind of curious, I noticed with the underground, has the techniques changed over the years? I just noticed, like, comparing a few years ago to Grove to Michigan and the placement of some of those, for example, in front of my home, it's done and the access point is done in the sidewalk. I noticed that section of the sidewalk is kind of unlevel compared to the others. I noticed on Michigan Street, though, it appears the access to the underground wiring is now like in the
Greenway.
In the Greenway. Is there now a better way of doing that than?
Well, what we do is when we're doing a full reconstruct, we try to put the utility infrastructure under the sidewalk. So you'll see on all of our full reconstructs, the quasi boxes are placed in the sidewalk. When we're doing a Michigan Street, we tend to use the street or the green lawn, so we don't have to replace the sidewalk. And eventually, when we do Michigan, which is also a street in need, we won't have to redo the sidewalk and tie it into the new approaches for elevation and grades. But we haven't changed any technique. It just, when they decide to do a street underground, they really just look at where is the best route to put the infrastructure. Morgan, Freebie, and Hillcrest, we're going to phase in that over a couple of years. There's phase one will be next year. Pennsylvania Park, Park Avenue. This is another supplement to Kendall's project, $75,000 for hook lights and some of the wiring and infrastructure required for that project. The electric system, GIS mapping, we put this in here every year just because we are trying to increase our mapping. Because everything is underground, we do have a mapping system survey that comes in and tags all our transformers and junction boxes so we can get them on our maps for reasons of outages and maintenance. 46 kV metering structure replacement. I'll show you a photo of this in a second, but it is the main metering station that serves the city of Petoskey from the wholesale electric markets. It's an older structure. It has CTs, we call them, current transformers, and specialized metering equipment that's on wood structure that will be upgraded next year. This is just some of the photos of the electric undergrounding we're gonna be doing. I believe this is Petoskey, or this is Fulton Street, actually, near Petoskey. We'll be doing the admin building up near Howard and Sheridan. We'll be doing Grove Street near Howard. This is a photo of Morgan Preby and Hillcrest. Go ahead.
I happen to live on Hillcrest. It's a very interesting thing that happens. There's green space on Hillcrest from Freebie to my house.
Okay.
Then the sidewalk turns and there's no green space. It runs right along the curb and goes all the way down Jarman. And I know there must be a reason for that, but it's really hard on your public works people because the sidewalk plow comes in the morning and clears my sidewalk because he wants the school children to get out. And right away after that, the snowplow comes and puts all the snow back on the sidewalk. And I just, there are a few places in town where we don't have a green space. And I just wonder if there's probably a reason for that. But I thought if you're going to repave and put utilities, if there's an opportunity to put green space on the streets and other streets like that.
We'll take a look at that. You're absolutely right. And it is a battle all winter for sidewalks that are back of curb.
Right.
And I can't say it enough. When we talk to the snow blower drivers, we bring them in at 4 a.m. We start our crews shortly thereafter, depending on the weather event, but it is challenging. It depends on the amount of snow and how much they're throwing.
Yeah, I try to live by two edges because I'm running that curb just so we can find out where the curb is.
Yep, if we can get green space between those sidewalks and curbs, it's a benefit for everybody. So we'll take a look at that.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Your last slide. So you mentioned something about electric system GIS mapping. Do you have equivalent systems for water and sewer as well? GIS?
We do. Yep. You'll see that in all the way through on all the utilities that when we're mapping, we just pick it all up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This is the metering station that I was talking about. It's out on River Road, just past the Spoon Foods facility. So this will all be replaced and I haven't seen the design on it yet, but the electric is working on that.
Is it going to be replaced in the same spot?
It will be.
Is that a vulnerable spot?
It is. And we're looking at putting guardrail against it. Pretty tough to move transmission because transmission is high line and the transmission 46 kV that feeds the city leaves this point and goes direct right down Clarion Avenue and dumps into the substation by the DPW. And when you start relocating transmission, you're talking some major guying anchor systems that really put you off different areas that you may have to get easements for. But we're looking at that to see how we can secure it in a better, but it's vulnerable and it's been there for years.
I have a question about that substation too, if I may.
Yeah.
So with the solar development on the old landfill, you had mentioned something about a transformer, or I don't know what the technical term is, but it wasn't owned by us. It's owned by consumers down the corner. I don't know. There was some issue with having to make an improvement in that substation to accommodate the solar.
No, the solar will be a standalone with Sol America. So the infrastructure will be on the landfill property, the inverters and any transformers that step it down or up to get to us. But it's going to tie direct to our distribution system at Lears Road in Howard. And there's nothing we need to do except just plug it in, if you will.
Thank you.
But yeah, there will be some equipment on the landfill that will be Sol America's and ours. So there is a demarc in that equipment lay space area.
Thank you.
Okay, so I went through the we'll go 2026. I better get caught up here. So 2026 is phase 2 of the undergrounding electric Morgan Preby and Hillcrest. The Petoskey sub 46 kV, Petoskey 6 and 8 undergrounding. That is the circuits that are adjacent to the Public Works facility, and I'll show you a photo of that. Mitchell Road substation and River Road fiber connection. We're trying to interconnect our substations with fiber optic that the city would own, and it's a secure connection. distribution pole testing for some of the transmission poles that we still serve the city with and some of the distribution older poles. There is a testing system that you can bring in and we can try to, on the critical infrastructure, see if it's in need of replacement. Mitchell Road substation transformer bushing replacement. That's the big power transformer out on Mitchell Road that serves primarily the east side of Petoskey and some of the south. But we can interconnect our Sheridan substation with our Mitchell Road. So it's critical infrastructure, and bushing replacement is not uncommon when you're doing oil samples on those big units and you're looking for any potential of failure. So I think we got some pictures here. This is the Petoskey substation circuits. We've been undergrounding a lot in the city, and you can see on this particular photo, the upper three lines are the transmission I was just talking about that serves the city. We are going to underground around the DPW and slide it just south out by the salt shed. And what that is in preparation for is the DPW upgrades. So in order to free up some space and tie the two sites of the Midwest siding and the Public Works facility together, this is critical to getting that out of the way.
And when is that?
That's been pushed to 26 as the start, or 27, excuse me. 26 would be the infrastructure, and then 27 would be the start of the DPW. And just to touch on that briefly, we are in the middle of a cost of service study for our utilities, electric, water, and sewer. And we will plug in those studies, you plug in your capital needs. So as you notice in the CIP, we're about $1 million a year on our electric infrastructure and about the same on our water sewer, about 500,000 on water, and just depends on the balance of the project. But we'll plug in our capital needs into those studies, and they will project out how we can fund these upgrades. And that's what we're waiting on. Okay. And also the construction is not getting any cheaper, as we all know. We'd like to get the project off the ground, but it has been a little unstable, and we're hoping that things settle out just a little bit. I'm guessing that we'll be looking at issuing bonds potentially for that DPW based on the size and the dollar amounts that have been projected. But we're in the middle of trying to figure all of that out so that we can unveil that with answers of how we're going to fund it and what it's going to look like. 2025 water and sewer. So we're back to Howard Street on the full reconstruct water and sanitary. Will be pretty routine. We'll replace all water main, all sanitary, all storm sewer with the street funds, the storm sewer. This lead and copper rules material inventory. We received a $600,000 grant from the state to do the inventory. And it's a 2-year, we have 2 years on the grant. So we're going to spend $300,000 in 2025, 326. This $50,000 will be what the city contributes to the project for restorations and that sort of thing that we'll do in-house. So you'll see that in the budget, but there's $600,000 that was allocated to the city for the investigation.
So Mike, is that 50,000 from the city for the point of connection problem where you guys have to replace inside homes? And if not, have there been any developments from the legislature about trying to fund that unfunded mandate?
There is nothing out there yet funding those service replacements. And the key word here is inventory. All they're asking for us to do right now is identify the services in Petoskey. Are they copper, galvanized, or were they connected at one time to lead? So this money only investigates. So what we've done in the city, and some of you have probably seen the excavations when we back those service curb stops. But rather than bring a contractor in and do the restorations, we do that in-house with our own folks. The quality and the type of restoration is better managed for us, knowing that we're doing it. So that's what the 50,000 is for. We're just gonna supplement that grant money for that inventory only. And as far as service replacements, we cover that under our budgets for like the Howard Street project. We are mandated to replace those services, and we are identifying those services as we speak. The guys are trying to get into some of the houses to identify. So it's still out there and we're still looking for the funding.
Follow-up question on that. It seems to me that where you're doing those borings or those examinations seems to be like one per street.
Correct.
Is it a sample, and are you assuming then that the other service connections are similar or identical?
Yes, it's an actual software program that the state has allowed communities to use. We're using Hubble, Roth, and Clark. That basically comes up with what we know to date, the knowns. They plug it into the model, and then the model throws out all the areas that are the unknowns, and it does the averaging. So you might see one or two on a block, and if you get one hit, then it's copper, then you can assume that there's copper amongst other areas in that block. What this 600,000 is going to do is fill those gaps. We've already met the mandate on the random select. We'll turn that in by the end of this year, and we'll start the next round, which is start identifying X number of services a year to fill in the gaps. It's quite a process.
Will any of this information be publicly available to homeowners so that they, when you make an assumption or you do a test, they'll know what their service lines are?
Everybody that we touch will get a letter from our water department telling them what we found. And if there is galvanized line there, then we also offer testing. And there's a protocol that we follow per the state of notifications. So that's lead and copper, then dead end water mains, water quality issues. So we threw some money in the water and sewer fund to investigate and engineer the next go around of where do we have these water quality issues and where can we tie these loops together. We did one this year at the Lincoln Place and Bayview Avenue. So we'll be looking at spending some dollars in engineering, which will put us over to the Wesley Ann Street area and potential easements that are required. So we threw that in there to just kind of show you that we're looking into the 26 season already. And here is the 26 water and sewer spot repairs and upgrades. Those are associated with street resurfacing, same with sanitary. Lime kiln well control building upgrades, improvements, which is down here on Bayfront Park, the little building that sits against the bluff there. We need some internal work done, so we'll be looking at that. Again, 26, the lead and copper materials inventory, and then the dead end water mains water quality issues, 250,000 slotted today. That is an estimate, but we'll better define that with the 50,000 and 25 to engineer that. Water pool, several smaller purchases this year. I'll go through these quickly. We have a patrol vehicle, a couple of staff vehicles for replacement, 1-ton dump truck, 2 portable light towers that we currently use. You probably have seen these light towers out at Bay Harbor during the 4th of July and here at the Bayfront. And we use those for emergencies and night work. But they're in need of some upgrades. We have an electric pickup, and the big one is the bucket truck replacement. You probably have seen this before. Bucket trucks have not been available. They were 3 years out a year ago. We're getting information that they may be available to even order one, but it's probably going to be 1.5 years to 2 years to get it, which is not uncommon. Some of the trucks we ordered this year, I'm not going to see till next year. We have a wastewater treatment staff vehicle also. So 26, I'll just touch on this. Again, smaller type vehicles, pickups, utility carts, out front mower replacement. So pretty routine. You can see some of the years that these vehicles are approaching 10 years plus. We evaluate every year. This list really does get shifted quite a bit based on maintenance that we perform on these vehicles on a regular basis. So it slides. So 25, I'm confident. 26 may shift just a little. Here's the light tower that I was talking about. Here's the 1-ton dump and the 2001 bucket truck. We were talking today at our staff meeting and somebody made the comment, well, it's a good looking truck, that 62. And then I said, yeah, it really is. It's a 2008, but it's got a lot of paint on it. So just so you know, winter projects, it's not uncommon for us to go through our vehicles and we'll paint them in-house with our guys, or we'll send them to the paint shop to do the lower quarters, just so they have a decent presence in our city. But some of them are really old. It's not the miles so much, it's just the hours that are on the trucks that are tough.
Mike, and are any of the new vehicles planning on, are you going to EV at all?
We have not done anything on EV yet, but we buy a lot of these vehicles through the state and it's limited at this point, but we're hearing from my deal that there'll be more offerings in the future. So yes, as soon as we can do that, we will be transitioning some of these vehicles. Parks and Rec pickup, public safety vehicle, Dodge Charger. Whoa, did I do something wrong here? No, I guess I didn't. Going back. So anyway, that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any more questions or anything I can help answer. I'm happy to give it a shot.
I just had one quick side question. On parking lots, do they use Pacer ratings too?
We rate them for Amy.
Yeah.
But it's not part of the asset management program that we run through the state. So, but we use the same system, but yeah. Yep.
Mike, when you underground electric, is getting the fiber off the poles, how long is that taking these days?
Well, it's taken a couple, 2 to 3 years, but as of late, we have a really good Spectrum crew and AT&T crew that have been following us up. We got Lake Street already underground. They went over to Kalamazoo and got that underground. And they even worked last winter on it, but we're getting better response from those utilities. So
I had one call from somebody on Walker-Through.
okay. We have areas around that are.
All the individual that I would ask.
Yep.
At this meeting.
Yep, we are moving to Jennings. Our crews are leaving Michigan Street like this week or early next week. We're moving to Grand Avenue. We're going to be burying that, and then we're moving to Jennings. We're going to start at the Four Corner Market and we're heading west. So with that, Walkazoo, that corner, they will be turning. I'm just not sure where the demarc's going to be, but that's what's on the docket this year. And Walkazoo did come up and West Jefferson did come up.
I'll let that individual.
Yeah, and he can call us direct and we'll meet him on site and let him know what the actual plans say where we're going. So
Is that Wakazoo, Coast Carlton and Myrtle, or where?
yeah, we'll be coming down Jennings and probably going each way on Walkazoo. I'm just not sure where they're coming up because they'll usually go to the next block, or if they have a good end point, that's what they'll do. But that's what they're planning on this year yet. And I know some of Walkazoo's been done in Rush, down in Grove. We've done that. So I'm guessing there's going to be a connection point at some, they'll get all of that underground. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have anything? With that. Any public comment, any comment that public wishes to make?
Time for any category.
Sure. Throw it out there, yeah.
Questions or concerns?
Who do you address your questions or concerns?
I'm just trying to whom do we direct our questions or concerns on the winter sports park? 550,000, please.
City council, because it wasn't open to the decision on the expenditure of the money.
What's the deadline on that?
This will be coming back. This capital improvement plan will go to planning commission next week, and on August 26th, we'll go to city council for consideration and potential adoption. So that would be your next, those two meetings would be opportunities for comments as well for those in front of those two bodies specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Shields.
Have received two comments asked to read. I'm gonna just summarize these, partly because I left one of the comments at home, that written document, so I apologize to Keith Munson, 1034 Wakazu, summarize his comments. He's opposed to the ARPA money being used to fund the Winter Sports Park pavilion improvements. Nancy Duan, 1004, 1004 Wakazu. I also summarize her comments that she is opposed to the ARPA money being applied to the Winter Sports Park Pavilion. And I will submit both of these written comments to Manager Horn to be published and put with the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment? Anyone else with yes.
Thank you. So I think the biggest questions I have are like kind of the white elephant in the room is like, how are we ever going to replace or repair the bike path? Like it's been in a state of disarray since the high water levels, and to not have anything budgeted or any vision of like how that's going
There is a vision.
to be fixed.
There is a vision.
So I'm asking about the capital improvement plan and under the auspice of the capital improvement plan.
Yeah, right now it would be a dart on a dartboard because we are going through design right now. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have our design complete. Some options that we can present and have a better idea what that number looks like. It's going to be a large number. It's not going to be a number that I think we can just throw in our capital improvement plan and facilitate on our current tax structure. This is going to have to be all hands on deck, all of our partners on board, both here locally and in Lansing. So it's going to take an appropriation, but there's not going to be an appropriation without some skin in the game, as we all know. So we know we're going to have some resources to put toward this project, but we're going to need to lean on our state legislators to funnel dollars up here for this project, in my opinion. But that analysis is ongoing. Kendall and I are in bi-weekly meetings with Baird. So there will be some opportunities for presentations here shortly coming up in the next month or so that will get the community engaged in the process and start getting feedback. We're about 25 to 30%. So now's the time to get that feedback before we finish engineering and make some assumptions that may be not supported. So this is the time where we want to get that feedback.
So just to follow up on that, is it fair to say, Shane, we really don't even know right now if this can be done?
Well, we know it can be done. Yes, that's yeah, it can be done
In the same way it was done, or without risk of it having the same.
It will likely, one of the failure areas will likely be bridged. There'll be a bridge component. The other will likely be kind of filled, and then we're looking at some cobble beach area that will kind of level that off at the water level. So it'll be a combination of different approaches, but one approach certainly will be the use of a structure to span the failed area. That significant failed area has some groundwater moving through it. So instead of fighting that, bridging it and then kind of redirecting that flow that's occurring naturally through stormwater channels and such that doesn't impact the soils, will be something that we will be looking at from a engineering standpoint. So it can be done. Certainly it can be done. Now, can it be done in the range that we all hope it that we were hoping for, that, I guess that remains to be seen, but it can be done, yes.
So in the broadest sense, it can be done with a big investment. We don't know the amount of money yet, but with a guarantee that it's not going to fall in the water again or fall down again. I mean, that would be my basic concern.
Well, wouldn't guarantee anything, but, yeah, I don't know that any engineer could guarantee that, but we're gonna certainly put something forward that eliminates as much of the opportunity for failure as possible, for sure.
So there will be a risk benefit analysis.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
In both 25 and 26, and I'm not sure the other years, there's resurfacing of the wheelway, those types of things. If this project or the other end comes through, would it make any sense to use some of those maintenance monies now towards that project? They're probably a drop in the bucket when what you're talking for dollars, but I'd hate to see something done and then have to be redone, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That is kind of small dollars in the big scope of things. I mean, this is a moving target, and I don't even want to throw out any guesstimates at this point because it would be a guess. But we're getting to the point where we need to get the community, our partners engaged, obviously city council, planning commission, because this is where we want feedback on. Certainly the feedback we received was we want to maintain the vistas on the trail that we all appreciate and enjoy. So those will remain. But there's a price involved with doing that as well. So we'll just have to see what that is and get it. Again, it'll be all hands on deck from a funding standpoint. We're not going to do this. Kendall has a good line that we're not going to do this with bake sales. So it's going to be a help from our friends in Lansing that we're going to need to lean on. Charlie?
Is this a potential project, depending on the timing, that could qualify for the ARPA funds?
Certainly, but again, that's, 600,000 is a lot of money and there's no question about it. But when you're looking at a project of that magnitude, it's not going to move the needle much.
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, yeah. But
Don't you have to have those ARPA funds spent?
yeah, 26 and it's 26. Yeah.
So that's not gonna happen in that
Yeah.
timeframe.
Thank you, Shane, for the explanation. So do you know when that Baird and Associates study is gonna finish? I think it was like 80,000 that was allocated to their finishing up their study. So is that like coming down the pike right now?
So their study will be complete. We're hoping by the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so you talked about appropriations, so that would be like our state senator or our newly elected
Yes.
representative.
Yes.
And then also, you mentioned something about groundwater coming through. Does that be from like the Appler Road?
Just from the hillside, yeah, we've done, Kendall, how many groundwater wells are up there? Monitoring wells, like 7, 6?
5 down on the actual trail and there's 4 on the trail, there's 3 up on the road.
So we're monitoring, like even right now, we're monitoring groundwater fluctuations, in the wells. That's, our consultants can see that data in real time. And after a heavy rain, how that's impacted. So we have great data that we've generated since all these groundwater monitoring wells have been in place. So it's from the hillside.
Okay.
So it's a matter of do you bring in fill material and pull that grade back to where it was and channel the flow through piping away from the trail, or do you not fight it and span it, but still kind of manage the groundwater so it's not going to impact? Because that was a big thing that we hear a lot. We can build this guy bridge, just build a bridge across it. You still have to have good soil material for your abutments, and you have to have good foundations, as we all know and understand. So we need to be able to manage that groundwater regardless of the treatment technique that we use. But a bridge I think, could be a neat add to the trail, because you could build it in a way that would complement, our area and add amenities to it that that folks could potentially enjoy. So I think that that could be something that would be an added feature to the trail that we don't currently have, but again, it's going to be a costly project, and we're still kind of wrangling what that's going to look like. But there'll be plenty of opportunities to have discussions on how do we arrange that to all work out.
And then I guess the second question would be, is that burden ours alone to bear? And what's the role of Emmett County in the original creation of that bike path and the federal funding that was leveraged to do that, as well as resort townships? So public partnerships and does that burden belong to the city of Petoskey exclusively, or?
It does not, and we've kind of gone out on our own because we wanted to kind of move this project along without kind of water being poured on it right away. So we've kind of we've carried the weight on this project, but at some point that weight needs to be redistributed.
Mm-hmm. And then the third question I had was just about making a case for a millage. And I know that Kendall has, we've talked about that a little bit in city council and when we did our parks tour. So I guess, I don't know, when you're planning for capital improvement plans, you're not necessarily thinking of alternative or potential sources for revenue to come in. But if a millage would be a viable request, or if there was political will to make that happen, how would that process kind of unfold, and how does that pertain to the capital?
Yeah, that's certainly something we want to come back to city council and have further discussions with each of you on. I think we've all had opportunities to do one-on-one visits with all of our parks. And certainly we all value those spaces and want to see those spaces maintained appropriately and to the high standard that we all expect. So it would certainly be nice not to be so reliant on grant dollars to do projects and wait on grant schedules and all that stuff. If we had resources that we could really aggressively attack some of our needs within the park, and really focus attention on our neighborhood parks. As we've done the drive arounds and been in our neighborhood parks, there's some, in some ways, shame on us for allowing them to get to this point. We have to do better in our neighborhood parks. We do a great job on the bayfront and our spaces that our visitors enjoy, but it's almost to the point where our residents have not gotten the same opportunity to have those amenities within their neighborhood parks. And that's unfortunate. And I think that's something that a millage can help us address more effectively. But we have to do the job of telling our story and doing that effectively through marketing, through campaigns. We have to be obviously very careful. We can't push out a vote yes campaign. That's something, but we can share information. We can share what our master plans say based on community input. And over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, this is what we plan on using those dedicated dollars for. And obviously, they're going to hold us accountable to that. And next time that comes up, if we're successful, hopefully we've done a good job over the course of that millage campaign to say, yeah, let's go forward and renew it and move forward. These are typically fairly successful if you can kind of tell your story effectively and engage the community effectively.
Anyone else have anything they wish to ask or make comments about? Well, I want to say for Shane and everybody else at City Council, thank you for coming this evening. I ask you to do one thing.
Oh, you can do that. We can do that.
Take your battery out.
I do want to say before you leave, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I want to give a shout out to Sarah. Sarah has done a lot of work and putting the document that you have at your table together, a lot of legwork that she's done on top of election work and FOIA work and, you name it. So thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.